virtual backgrounds?
Actually, I feel pretty good about them. Actually, I'll show you what I did recently is I just took a picture of my office from just one point of view. And now you think I'm in my office when I'm actually not. So if I had to sit in my bedroom, then it's hard to tell until I move around a little bit.
Very clever. Very clever.
Yeah.
I appreciate you making some time. I really enjoyed the videos, and I wanted to ask you some more specific questions about interview mastery. But why don't we talk a little bit about what you're doing and get your thoughts on what the service is, what it does, how it helps people, and how you started. I mean, the concept of teaching people to interview well is not a new one, but what's new in the interview world? It's a facetious question a little bit, but you know, what skills do we need to master now as interviewers who may never shake hands again?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you got a lot of questions in that question of yours. So I'll give you a little background. Interview mastery is really, interviewing became a passion of mine when I went from being a plant manager to a headhunter.
Mm,
And my income depended on how the engineers that I was trying to place, my income, my ability to feed my children depended on how somebody else did on an interview. And I did that for 11 years, but I learned really quickly in the first year that the most qualified person almost never gets the job. And it all depended on not their competence as in their chosen field, but their skills in presenting and talking about them during an interview.
mm,
So that's when the fascination started, and then it continued when I was the head of talent acquisition for places like Fidelity Investments, Hewlett Packard, and some medium-sized companies and a couple of startups. Everything came down to the interview again. So if I'm the internal recruiter or the head of staffing for Fidelity or Hewlett Packard, my ability and my team's ability to fill positions and move and help move the business forward depended on this interview. It depended on the skill of both the interviewer and the interviewee. So it again fueled my passion of trying to solve this problem that is inherent in the hiring process.
mhm.
So it led me to, first now interview mastery is using videos to describe to both job seekers and recruiters and hiring teams, here's exactly how you do it. Here's how you handle these different situations. So that my goal is to make the hiring process something that's productive, prosperous, and even joyful for everybody involved.
Joyful. That's a great
Yeah,
word.
people challenge me on that one, but yeah, joyful.
It can be. It can be. I personally love interviewing. That's why I've been in
Do you?
recruiting for over 20 years
Mm-hmm.
because people are fascinating, and getting to know them, getting to hear their story, getting them to tell me their story, being able to tell their story, and then, the flow also works the other way. Clients tell me their
Mm-hmm.
story, I tell their stories. So I consider myself a storyteller, and I love connecting people and helping them out. So interviews for me are fun and they are joyful because it is your story. I love being interviewed, and if I wasn't self-employed, I'd do it more often.
Mm. Yeah. The interviewer is actually, a lot of focus has been on the skill level of the candidates, but even the interviewers, they have an impossible task. They rarely have any skill in interviewing, but what they have to do is predict the future job performance of a complete stranger who they spend 45 minutes with.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but the weatherman with all the fancy algorithms and AI-powered big data analytics can't predict the weather accurately for a specific location in a particular town. They can't do it.
I
So
can't do
how are
it.
you going to predict the future job performance 2 years out from someone you know almost nothing about? And there's been countless studies over the years that show that interviewing the traditional interview process is only 47% accurate. That's less than flipping a coin.
Grim statistics indeed.
Yeah.
So how do you improve that?
So what I did is I was looking for kind of a mental model of what a successful interview looks like from, say, the candidate point of view. Let's take that one. So what I did is so I was a recruiter, so I had feedback from both interviewers and interviewees on at least 5,000 interviews, and that's not an exaggeration. And being a physicist and an engineer by training, I, took kind of a scientific approach. I was looking for a mental model.
Mm.
And so then, like a good physicist, I have all this information and I try and shrink it down, boil it down to something that I can share with another person very simply. I basically give them a mental model. And that's what I did. I found out what kind of the secret sauce was, and it was quite a bit different than what people traditionally think it is. And there was also, when you're a recruiter, like you said, you see lots and lots of people, thousands of people. And every once in a while, as a recruiter, I had a team of 6 that worked for me. Every once in a while, we'd run across a person who got an offer every single time they interviewed. Now, obviously, these people were doing something fundamentally different than the average person. And I can tell you that one of them became a friend of mine, and I tracked Jennifer's career for 30 years, and her record is perfect. Every time she interviewed, she got an offer.
Every interview, every offer. That is incredible.
Yeah, actually, I teased her once. She was interviewing with a large corporation, which I won't say who, and we were debriefing on the phone, and she says, "Oh my God, I think my record has been broken after 15 years."
Yeah.
And I said, "I know. I think you're right. I think you're right, Jane." And because the company was ghosting them, they were not getting back to her. And then about a month later, they called her and said, "Well, we'd like to make you an offer."
Wow.
And she called me, and I said, "Record's still intact."
Intact.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
interviewing is a skill. People can perfect it, and they can get to a point where they interview so well, everybody always wants to hire them.
Yep. 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 That's true. Now, explain? It's not a course in manipulation or creating a false impression. Actually, if you're a candidate, your purpose is to accurately communicate what you can do and the skills that you have. And the more accurate you are, the easier you make it for the interviewer to make an information-based decision rather than an intuition-based decision.
Right.
So
Right.
the secret is that I'm giving people, here's specific questions to ask at specific points to facilitate a conversation. Candidates normally think, hey, this is an interrogation. I show up, they ask me some questions, I give them answers, I walk away and hope they call me back. That's not an interview.
No. No, it's information versus intuition. Now, you have an engineering background.
Yep, I do.
Engineers, and forgive me for
Go right ahead.
Forgive me for throwing out stereotypes. Engineers are not known typically for having strong social interactions or being able to express themselves in a social setting. They tend to be very blunt and to the point and direct and lay the information out there. And they probably wouldn't have much use for an intuitive decision. Is that where this is coming from? Your engineering background? How much of that colors your approach to interviewing? And is there a place, and I want to bring it up to the people that I talk to, which are mainly salespeople. And salespeople are all about intuition. They're all about, yeah, that guy's a star. That guy's a killer. That guy's going to sell 1 million. I know it. And it's all gut feel. Trust your gut.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they're completely wrong.
but you have no time for that. I mean, you're
No, I
looking
have
at
no time for somebody saying, "Oh my gosh, I can pick a winner in 5 minutes." No, you can't. You have not been anointed with secret powers just because you're now a sales manager or a sales VP. It. The engineering part is actually it's even worse. I mean, my undergraduate degree is in physics,
Hmm.
and my master's degree is in engineering. But when I was analyzing, what made a good interview and what didn't, I boiled it down, and what I found was uh, kind of some principles of basic human communication in a weird setting called an interview, where each person has some kind of expectations of how it should be and how they should act. And the more authentic they are, the easier it becomes, and the more spontaneous communication, exchange, a conversation. And so everybody gets nervous. Uh, but so when people go through interview mastery or they learn these things somewhere else, they get a sense of confidence that I know what's going to happen. I know pretty much what they're going to ask me. I know what questions are going to be difficult, and I already know how I'm going to respond. So you have this certainty, and by doing that, you go into the meeting, you're able to be more yourself and more
Hmm.
comfortable.
Hmm.
And I find that uh, most of the areas where interview mastery is used is not technical. It's more sales, marketing, project management, nursing, uh, almost anything that requires an interview,
Hmm.
people use it. So,
So the technical people have their own standards of evaluating technical skills.
mhm.
So maybe the interview is more based upon information in that context. Salespeople do evaluate based upon what they call the numbers, quotas,
Mhm.
attainment, deal sizes. But again, most of it's on intuition. A lot of
Yep.
it's based upon network, um,
Mhm.
and that is a challenging way to hire people because, like you said, you're trusting your gut, you're going with your intuition. There's not a lot of information you can gather on how someone actually sells
Mhm.
until you see them selling.
Yeah, that's true. You could put them through, have them make a sales presentation or do what's called a simulation,
Yeah.
where you have them. You could. That's one of that's another evaluation method, is to just do a simulation. What you find in technical disciplines is some form of technical assessment. It seems to always involve a whiteboard,
Mhm.
where the maybe on the second interview, it used to be in person. The candidate would go into a conference room, and there'd be half a dozen people that would show up, mostly engineers, and they would ask technical questions of increasing difficulty. And my wife's a cybersecurity engineer, and so
Mhm.
we've got lots of examples of both her experience and my experience interviewing.
Mhm.
Being, uh,
Yeah. Now, how different is it now with the COVID restrictions?
hmm,
Everything's video. So how has that
yeah,
changed your take on interview mastery?
yeah,
What
it
new
has.
skills do you have to learn?
You have to learn how to look good on video to start
Yeah,
with.
yeah,
So
and you can do that looking at yourself. And I'm like, man,
there you go. Yeah,
I
if
should,
I was looking at you, I'd be looking down like this, and I think I'm doing eye contact, and I'm
yeah,
not.
no,
I have to look up and look into the camera. Now, since we're so used to consuming information and entertainment on video, that the interviewer's expectation are actually going up and up. They expect you that if you're a professional, you know how to look good on video.
yeah.
You know how to use virtual backgrounds. You know about having lighting on your face. But no, nobody knows. Like, how many times have you interviewed and somebody was like this, you know, and they were in the dark?
Yeah, yeah, like they're in
So,
the witness protection program.
yeah.
I had a really uncomfortable conversation with a guy who was he was on a Zoom call with me, but he had his phone and he
Hmm.
was holding it in his lap.
In his lap.
So my perspective is I'm looking up from his crotch.
Yeah. You,
And I couldn't end that call fast enough. And I was like, you know what? I don't care if you are going to be a great client for me. I got to get off this call because you're freaking me out.
yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. So uh, one of the recruiters, retained search recruiter, he's been using Interview Mastery for about 6 years. He calls me up one day and he's goes, Michael, you have got to help me. I have a senior vice president who just totally blew the video interview, and he lost the opportunity. I lost about a $25,000 fee, and the client
Ouch.
is not happy either because this
Ouch.
guy just was clueless, but he thought he was a star. And he just didn't know how to manage, a virtual background, or before virtual backgrounds were available. What was behind him, and what about lighting on your face? Like you can see, I got a lot of light on my face right now. I'm near a window. I got an extra light. My whole intention was to make sure you could see me. But if I have a lot of shadows in my face and I'm not looking at the camera, everybody gets not a very good impression. I did a video, I put it on
Mhm.
YouTube, 4 keys to looking fabulous on a job interview. And, as you can imagine, it was pretty popular. And there's lots of videos like that. So there's no excuse not to look your best on video.
Yeah. 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 So you've got a video series that people can watch and learn how to master the interview. You actually have a series of videos that you send to candidates
Mm.
before the interview as a prep, and that's part of the service you provide as well.
Yes, Interview Master. The paid version is, it's an app that it's a comprehensive library of how-to videos that's available on any device, whether it be your computer or one of these things.
Yeah.
But if you go, people can go to interviewmastery.com, and then they can click on Insider Secrets on the navigation bar, Insider Secrets, and it takes you to a place where you can get a downloadable book and a series of 3 or 4 free, and it's all free videos that show you how to handle the things that people stress out the most. Like, how do I handle the salary question? What if I have a real weakness? How do I handle that? How do I handle the video situation? Uh, and then I'll shut up in a minute. There's one other thing that I share with people, and it's called a 10K technique. And it's a way to impress every single interviewer you will ever meet simply by pulling up the 10K for a publicly traded company, or a company in the same industry.
Right.
And you look at one little section in that monster boring document called risk factors. And then within the risk factors, it lists the risk factors of investing in a company from a investor point of view, but it tells you what's on the mind of the senior executives. So if you're in IT, there's going to be a risk factor related to IT infrastructure. If you are a paralegal, there's going to be something about legal compliance and any legal proceedings. There might be something about intellectual property. There's always going to be something about recruiting and retaining the top talent. So if you're in human resources, that's your risk factor that you bring up. So knowing that demonstrates that you do just a much higher level of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
No, it's an excellent series of tools. I think everybody could benefit from the use of them, whether you're a recruiter or you're looking to interview successfully in the new format that we're all getting used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll definitely include that in the link and help people to find you. This may be a dumb question, but do you offer an accreditation? Do you offer you know, some kind of training courses to help people as they go through the process? I mean, do you have a
Actually, not yet. I've had that people ask me that over the years. Like, maybe I can have, like give them a little pin for going through the course or something like
sure?
that. Um, but no, I haven't done a certification yet. The first place I would implement a certification is for the hiring teams. Um, anyway,
Yeah,
to certify them that they've taken this course in how to hire people in a more analytical fashion.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, interviewing is a skill that everybody needs to get better at. I think
Yeah.
we all assume that the employers we send our candidates to are going to be able to interview them well, and that's a false assumption.
Oh yeah. It's well over 90% of the interviewers you encounter have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah,
And I was no different in my early part of my career. I had interviewed about 1,000 people. And if you would, in my first couple of years of being a recruiter, if you'd asked me, "Hey, Michael, you a good interviewer?" I would say, "Hell yeah, I do that for breakfast." I was interviewing 10 people a week for a
yeah,
couple of years,
yeah,
and I was terrible. When I finally realized what the best practices were, I was awful, and I thought I was awesome. You know? I had no clue. I didn't even know what I didn't know. Uh, and the interview itself it's a business event, and it's the most financially risky event to our careers and our livelihood, and people take it for granted. So
that's
I'm
true.
trying to doing my business to try and change that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're elevating the industry. It is an incredibly risky proposition when you think about it. You know, putting two strangers together. In an earlier episode, we talked about trying to create a love match between two strangers, and a love match in a platonic sense.
Mm-hmm.
But you're really trying to get the client and the candidate to come away saying, "I love that person, and I love the idea of working with them." And to make people fall in love, that's probably the hardest thing you can try and do with two humans, and try and do that in a professional context. That's the real challenge of the recruiter, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we all, everybody talks about making a cultural fit, and that is contrary to having a culturally diverse workforce. Trying to have a candidate that fits the same look and feel and personality of everybody that's already in that company or that little team culture. You're perpetuating unconscious bias.
Mhm.
I often, when I'm doing a course on interviewing, I tell interviewers, I said, how would you interview somebody if you had to do it blindfolded? How would you evaluate their skills? And they're like, what do you mean? Well, you'd ask questions to get some information, and all you would by not using your eyes, you would focus, you would listen more carefully, and you would get an impression of the person's abilities based on what you hear, and which is one way of minimizing the risk of just hiring somebody that kind of looks like you, which happens
Mhm.
all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it's the comfort level that we have in people that look good. Now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should turn off the video and start interviewing each other blind.
Yeah, yeah. Before video was so pervasive, we used to do phone screens.
Yeah,
Yeah, I tell I tell candidates that when they start stressing out about, oh my God, I'm doing a video interview, I have no idea how to do this. I said it's simple, simple. First, we're just going to make sure that you look good on video.
yeah,
All right, watch this video. It'll show you how to, set up the lighting. The second thing you can do is, kind of what they're going to ask you. Make a list of a little notes. Um, and tape your notes on the wall just behind the camera.
right,
You've got your own teleprompter.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What's the worst mistake that you've seen people make on an interview as a candidate when they're going into a situation that you've seen time and again backfires on
Oh
you.
yeah. Let's see. Well, there's a whole bunch, but one, if you start with the assumption that it's an interrogation,
Yeah,
meaning the interviewer is going to ask all the questions and I'm just going to give great answers, well, that's an interrogation.
yeah,
That's not an interview.
yeah.
So that's the mistake starts with the assumption before you even leave the house. Um, Second one is that they don't take it as seriously enough. Like business casual has kind of like got a little out of control. If you look, even if you're overdressed, you want to make sure you're representing yourself. You're not trying to match the culture.
Mm,
Right?
mm.
There's
Good
there's a
point.
few exceptions.
That's a good
You
point.
know, if anyway,
Yeah.
there's a few exceptions, and
Do you have a no pants exception during Zoom meetings? Is it ever okay to not wear pants in an interview?
well, especially if yeah, it's not okay, especially if you're on a Zoom call and you've got your phone in your lap.
Yeah, that's just wrong. So
That's something wrong with that. Yeah.
on so many levels.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's
You must have some stories.
it's recruiters always have the best stories. We always
Mm.
have the most shocking stories of what happens during an interview. Salespeople are very good at interviewing. So I specialized in sales now for a long time. Back when I was interviewing IT people,
Mm.
the stories were much more unpredictable. Salespeople, they know how they know how to present themselves. They know how to, you never have to tell a salesperson, hey, you should put on a tie or shine your shoes, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, they've got it down pat. But
Yeah.
to your earlier point, you can get so good at interviewing that you can talk your way into a job, and it's easier to do in a sales capacity because they don't really have the numbers to qualify it as much. But
Mm.
there are serial interviewers who
Mm-hmm.
can get the job, not deliver, in a year's time, walk away with pocketing a base salary, having sold nothing.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
there are lists of people that have a black mark beside their name who do that because they interview so well, they still get hired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And why is that? If so, the interviewers can be fooled by appearances and polished responses, and that's not what an interview is.
No,
If
no,
you're relying on more information, past performance, then as an interviewer, it's less likely that you can be fooled.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a joyful experience, Michael. That's what we're hoping
Yes.
for, anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the time. The video series is fantastic. Let me know how I can help to spread the word on that and popularize it. But
Yeah. Thanks. You already are.
I really appreciate this. I'm going to pull this together and get that out there and help you continue to do the good work because it is a joyful experience and it certainly can be a terrifying one. But
Yeah.
you know, uh, when you're scared, you got to get prepared. And I think you're helping people
Yeah.
to get prepared for something very terrifying.
Yeah. And tell me about the good. I mean, the good work that you're doing. I mean, you've changed your focus from trying to place people and just trying to help people.
Well, I think to give back to the world in need of help, helping people prepare for video interviews is something that I can do,
Mm-hmm.
to contribute and make people feel better because we're all getting used to this. I've been able to do it a bit more and a bit longer. So having that ability to help people is exciting. Um, the core service that I provide is still connecting people and helping
Mm-hmm.
helping folks explore the market, helping clients find the right talent by applying those rigorous procedures around executive search and placement. But there's a new methodology, you know, the firm handshake, the body language is different, the the redirect, you know, the cadence is different. The way we use our hands when we're talking is different. You know, I still have a habit of you know, making expansive gestures, but with a virtual background, you can't even see my arm sometimes, you know, it disappears,
That's right. That's
you
right.
know, and it's, you know, there's so many new wrinkles, so many new challenges to hiring without having the handshake, having the sniff test, you
Hmm.
know, having that eye contact, having that energy in a personal face-to-face meeting, you know, that exchange of energy is just not there. So
Right.
it's a new world, and I'm trying to help people, and certainly you're one person I can point them to that would really give them the in-depth help. So that's exciting to establish that partnership.
Yeah. I'll leave you with one technique that the video medium gives gives everyone an advantage in that you can practice interview at a moment's notice. And the way that you do it is write down the questions you expect them to ask you or the questions that you're afraid of, maybe 4 or 5 of them, and then just have one of your friends interview you over Zoom or Google Hangouts or Microsoft Teams.
Yeah,
And all they have to do is read the questions and you just practice
right,
responding.
right. Yeah, yeah, it's a simple tip, and it makes a big difference. It's a scary world
Yeah.
out there. You know, if you're looking for work right now, everything's got to be slightly terrifying for you. So, you know, it's good to promote these types of services, and to help people out. So I appreciate the time, and I want to thank you for doing the good work, and continuing to help people.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Kyle. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks, Michael. Great chatting with you.
Okay. Same here.